Hello, everybody. My name's Milan Starcic. Welcome to Freedom Rising, a podcast dedicated to empowering individuals on the journey to personal growth, lasting serenity, and freedom from addiction. Tune in and join the movement. Your journey to freedom starts here. We neither represent, promote, or demote any 12-step program or organization. We are merely souls on the path of recovery with the desire to expand our lives and experiences and share them with you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 130th Recovery Freedom Rising podcast. I'm Milan Starcic with my brother and co-host Scotty. Today's topic is acceptance. Can you share what this means to you, Scotty, and why you're happy to discuss this topic here today?
I Good morning, everyone. I think that I'm super stoked for this topic because it's one of the more fundamental elements of recovery in general. I think it's the key that unlocks the door when it comes to a lot of stuff. And that's when Lon asked me for a topic, that's just the first thing that popped into my head. And when I say that about opening the doors, because it's the very the very start of acceptance is in step one. And so its very start is something we practice from the beginning, right? And a lot of times when people fail with step one, it's because they're not accepting reality. So I think that acceptance, along with a life level of honesty, is like the very concrete of the foundation that is recovery.
I love that, and I love you, Scotty. And I'm so grateful we come here and we do these together because it is part of the food for my soul. It really is. And so I looked up, what the kind of a definition of acceptance is. I thought I'd start with that. Is acceptance is not passive resignation. It's the deep spiritual recognition that life unfolds on life's terms, not ours. It's the
Mm,
willingness to meet reality without trying to control, judge, or escape from it. As AA's 12 and 12 teaches, acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. And living clean reminds us that acceptance is a skill we grow into and one that frees us from resistance and helps us live in harmony with the moment. In long-term recovery, acceptance becomes less about surrendering to external circumstances and more about making peace with ourselves, our past, and the impermanence of everything. So
mm,
I was lucky enough to go to the AA World 2025 World Conference in Vancouver this weekend, everybody. And one of the things I learned, one of the phrases that stuck with me that I wrote down in my phone is it was self-forgiveness is giving up on hope for a better past.
mm,
And I thought that was incredible. And and I think that phrase there can tie into acceptance. You know,
mm-hmm,
um,
mm-hmm,
First of all, a big part of us in this program is living presently, right?
mm-hmm,
And when we are living without acceptance of the current moment, it means we're either stuck in the past, wanting this to be the past, like wanting
mm-hmm,
this to be based on something that we had decided should happen, or we're actually living in the expectation of like creating a future from now that's not happening, and that dissatisfaction is playing
mm-hmm,
over and over inside of us. And I was listening to someone this morning, and basically, he described, acceptance as like letting the rope go from the boat.
mm-hmm,
And,
mm-hmm,
just instead of, you know, instead of leaning into that preference in your
mm-hmm,
moment in your life,
mm-hmm,
you just lean away and let go.
mm-hmm.
And then, and then
Yeah.
you will, you, you will just have so much less pain in your life.
Mm-hmm, Yeah.
if you're living with acceptance. My sponsor, shout out to John, love you tons. You know, he said, you know, every moment is a choice. It's either acceptance or living in defects and shortcomings. Acceptance, defect, shortcoming. You know, it's like a fork in the road. And so, you know, one of the phrases that came up earlier in the fall when we were talking about acceptance on another one is embracing the constant state of change, not
Hmm.
just, you know, being okay with it, but actually just embracing the change, having gratitude that you don't know what the moment has to offer.
Hmm.
And
So can I
you
interject?
certainly
I
can.
I
I,
re I really like to unpack a lot of what you just said because I think it's very moving and there's a lot of content there.
mm,
Um, so I know music's really important to you, and music is
mm,
really important to me as well. And there's a band called Rage Against the Machine,
yep.
which is one of my favorite bands, or used to be, for a lot of reasons. But and they had a phrase in a song that I think is really interesting, and they mean it on a political, geographic scale, but I think it really ties in with what you were talking about. It's because that who controls the present or who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present now controls the past, right? So
Yeah.
there's that level of like Trump changing the names of things from the past, all that. But also I think it has very pointed applicability to myself, where how I see the past is going to affect my future trajectory. And when you were talking about embracing change, I think you can take it a step further because I think that one of the problems I've had accepting change is learning to let go of the expectation that
Mm,
it'll change a certain way, right?
that's
Because
right.
for a long time I could only accept change if it was going in a certain direction.
Acceptance is easy when life's great.
Yeah. So you know what I mean? And then the last thing I wanted to mention is I don't know if you've ever heard the story of the snake and the saw.
And the saw?
Yeah. So um there's a snake going through a man's shop, right? Slithering away, minding its own business. And it starts to slither over a saw that has been left a saw that has been left on the ground, right? Um, and so what happens is the blade of the saw nicks the snake, and the snake thinks it's getting attacked, so it wraps itself, right? They do that wrapping around their prey or for defense. But so they're wrapping around the saw, and the tighter they wrap, the harder those teeth are biting into the snake. So eventually, what the snake has to do is learn that um, it has to learn that it's it's squeezing, its attempts to defend itself is what's actually causing the pain, right? Because the saw does what the saw does. So without that recognition, the snake will kill itself trying to without because it's refusing to let go, right? So
I love that.
so
That's
yeah,
awesome.
I'm all about my analogies and my quotes.
I know, but also you're about good jokes at the end too.
I got one today, don't worry.
Oh, I knew it. I knew it. Okay, you ready for a question?
I am.
Okay. Acceptance is not about liking what is. It's about releasing the illusion that we must control it. Question. In your long term recovery, where have you found the most freedom by releasing control?
My thoughts. right? So, you know, I've shared about this before. Uh, I talk about it all the time, but it's important to get it out there because a lot of people do deal with mental health issues.
Absolutely.
And, I'm schizophrenic or schizoaffective, depending on which doctor you talk to. And because there's a lot of overlap there. And actually, I was talking to my wife about it this morning about how um, it's, there's probably like 75% probability that it was drug induced, right? Like I definitely think the drugs triggered it, right? So
Yeah.
whether it was latent in me and the drugs just flipped the switch,
Mm.
or it was something that was going to happen when I was around 20 anyway, right? So, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is I'm coming into recovery. I've been diagnosed, and I come up to, uh, I mean, my life is obviously fucked, right? So step one, when I came in this last time, step one was fairly simple for me. I just recognized that, you know, but step two, so in step two, it talks about being restored to sanity, right? Now, how does that work in your recovery when you have a mental illness? Because recovery from a mental illness is different than recovery from drug addiction. Recovery from drug addiction means you're not using it anymore and you're repairing
Hmm.
your life that way. Recovering from mental health, um, it's hard to even say that it's remission is the thing, right? Because there's so much to unpack there. And so I struggled with step two for a long time because, like what does it mean for that level of insanity or sanity? And what I learned was, and this took a few years, is that applying the spiritual principles in my mental health will restore me to a level of sanity that I could achieve without doing so. And what came to my mind and what I've found is it allowed me to take a step back from symptoms and assess what's going on.
Mm.
And what I would say that I feel like is harmony is the key to my mental health today. And that is something recovery has taught me as well, where is what's going on in my head in harmony with the world around me? Are my perceptions true? And I I can say that I've been pleasantly surprised as well as um, very blessed that um, applying those spiritual principles to my mental health has restored me to a lot of sanity. Like I went from averaging probably 2 or 3 psych ward trips a year, right? To not I haven't been in a psych ward for like 10 years.
Wow.
So, and a lot of that comes from applying spiritual principles. And then what I've learned was it's just because so the lesson I learned in recovery is just because I have a certain emotion or feeling about something. So emotions or feelings are real. They're real things that I experience,
Hmm.
they're, but they're not always true.
Yeah, but the facts they're based upon might not be true. That's what my first sponsor always said. Every
Yeah,
emotion you feel is real, but the facts they're based upon might not be.
yeah. And I've realized that I can apply that with my mental health. So just because I'm having an idea doesn't mean the idea is true. It's not a good idea. I mean, I make the joke. It's not a good idea just because I thought it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot there, and I've found that I've had much greater success in doing it that way than I've seen in others with similar conditions.
Hmm.
It was that case. So now with the freedom and acceptance, so I'll say it this way: the acceptance that I can't always trust my senses or I can't always trust my thinking allows me the freedom to let go of it and sort through it. And it's not a war all the time.
I love that. I wanted to touch on one thing before I answer that question, because I'm not sure, but it was taught to me that the insanity part, like restore us to sanity, the insanity part of alcoholism or addiction, whichever, is the part that despite all the self knowledge in the world, we end
Mhm.
up doing or taking that first drink.
Yeah,
Like the insanity is that action that, despite all evidence and life experience that this is a bad idea and we know it, we don't have the switch to say no.
no, I agree with you.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people say uh, that the insanity is doing something over and over again, expecting different results.
Hmm.
I knew what my results would be when I would use.
Yeah.
I was not expecting anything different. I knew it was not going to be a good time,
Yeah.
but I had no ability
But we didn't
to,
have the sanity to say no.
yeah. And when you're in your insanity, it doesn't feel like you're in your insanity. So,
Because it's like, I think for me, when I first got into the program, I was mistaking the obsession of the mind, right, as me
hmm
thinking about substances all the time. But the obsession of the mind is that you're obsessed with yourself so much that you think you can control it. Is that not
hmm
right?
I can see that. Yeah, I can
And,
see
and,
that.
and then so then a lot of people take that obsession and they call that the insanity. But the insanity is actually the act of us not having the resistance.
I like that. Yeah, that's a good perspective.
Like and I heard a bunch of people this weekend and and I was like, okay, I'm like, I think I'm on the right path of knowing the difference of these three things. But
Yeah.
even if you relate that type of insanity, right? It's like let's turn it around to your mental illness for a second, right?
hmm
If you if you act on that mental illness, right? Then that is a very similar insanity because
hmm
you you have numerous times where that is not the correct guiding force, but you're
Yeah.
acting on that, right? So it's
Yeah.
it's very parallel to the insanity that we experience with our addiction or alcoholism.
Yeah. And I think one of the ways it manifests for me in both places, right, is so my mental health tells me not to take my medicine,
Uh,
and my addiction
tells
tells
you
me
not to
not
go to
to
the meeting.
not to take my medicine. Right? There's a
Yeah,
lot of parallels there,
yeah,
and I think one thing that's important too is to realize that, and this goes with your obsession, is that if the drugs aren't in my body, then I don't have to worry about the physical allergy because
that's right.
there's nothing to trigger it. So what I'm dealing with is the mental and spiritual and emotional side of the disease,
Yeah.
right? So,
Well, it's like I had dinner with my sponsor at the conference, and they had one of the seminars was on halt,
hmm
right? And he said, he said, I can agree to a certain point. He says, but nowhere in the literature does it really talk about that. Like he said, this was his justification. He said, if I'm spiritually fit, which to him it's like that is, close to God, um, living spiritually, I don't take a
hmm
drink. He
yeah,
said, I have been hungry, angry, lonely, tired, and not taken a drink. And he's
hmm
like, I've been rested, I've been rested with people, happy and awake, and I'll
hmm
take a drink. He's
yeah,
like, he said, but he's like, I never take a drink when I'm spiritually fit. He said,
yeah,
so he's like, the halt may put you in a position of a higher percentage of a
yeah.
relapse of whatever sort. He's like, but I'll tell you right now that for me, let's talk about spiritual fitness.
Well, I have two points to that. One is I have a sponsee, and his danger time, because he's relapsed a couple of times since I've known him, uh, is when he's happy. When he is in a euphoric place,
Yeah,
he does not have the defense.
yeah,
Like he rides a motorcycle. He had gone to an event that touched him deeply and spiritually, and he was basically euphoric on the drive home. So he ended up speeding and like just going like he went like 175 or something, and he got caught. And I've seen it. It's a pattern with him. So I agree with that. And whenever I feel like I'm in situations that would traditionally trigger me, right?
hmm
Uh, whatever those may be, or if I'm doing something that's anyway, spiritual fitness is my guide, right? Like I used to
hmm
coach football. After games, we would go over to one of the coaches' places, and we would have like a meal, and they would drink. And my gauge was that I had to be in a certain level of spiritual fitness because I knew I was going to be around that, and I don't want to relapse.
hmm
But that's my gauge is my spiritual fitness. Because if I'm not spiritually fit, then if I don't have willpower against using, why would I go to a situation where I need to exercise my willpower?
yeah.
Right?
Like what you're basically saying, I'm surrendering to the addiction.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
spiritual fitness is a really important, really important
We
piece.
should do. We should get my sponsor on one with me and you, and have one together. You'll love him. I know you'll
Oh,
love him.
I'm down for that for sure.
Okay, so acceptance is not about liking what is, it's about releasing the illusion that we must control it. In my recovery, where have I found the most freedom by releasing control? You know, I know I say this over and over recently, but it really is the truth. After the great resurrendering in March 2025, releasing control of being the remover of my defects has
Mm,
given me more freedom like more freedom than I can even say in the last 3.5 months. It has been like a tidal wave of change in my life by changing the way that I pray and just by finally, really remaining vigilant on my knowledge that it's not me removing my defects. Like I was really feeling plateaued. I was starting to get that hamster wheel about things
mm,
like anger and that, and it's just
yeah.
not my job. Like I need to let the rope go. I was listening to that thing this morning while I was walking, that it was talking about letting go of that rope. And I was walking and I literally, Scotty, I looked up and it was at the place where I usually pray. And just with my hands, I'm like, today I'm letting the rope go. And that same wind from the universe just came and we had our moment, me and the universe again. And it was, it was telling me that letting that rope go is what I need to do right now.
Yeah.
And for anybody out there, the visualization of letting go of a rope that you're pulling on is a really good physical one, because if you clench your arms like you're holding a rope and then you just
Hmm.
let it go, you'll feel a physical release.
Hmm.
And some of us need a physical component to that mental philosophy, just to ignite that feeling. Because whether it's me letting go of something mentally or me letting go of something physically with acceptance,
Hmm.
like uh, inside it has that same feeling. Even if it's not the exact same muscular feeling, there's
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
that like that speck of space where there's no struggle.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that. I think that when hmm, when we pray with sincerity and intent, crazy things happen. Like changes happen. One thing I want to say about step seven, and I didn't realize this until much later in my recovery, but I struggled with the same thing where like um I don't like my character defects. And there's 2 points that I've come to learn. And one is um Mr. Loves More. One one
Baron.
there one is it's not me who removes the defects, right? Now the second part of that is I don't get to choose which defects get removed first, right?
Yeah.
Because like if it's up to me, like I see these glaring defects and I'm like, I have to get rid of them. And that's not how it works. The other thing too though is I found out, and this is the one that's been much more recent in my recovery, is that the reason my defects get removed is not because I don't like them, and it's not because they introduce bad behavior, although those are underlying reasons. The real reasons goes so that I can help others and be of more service to other people. Because without those defects, right, I'm better able to help my fellow addict. That's why they get,
Mm.
and that's why I don't get to choose the order.
Mm. I love that. Do you have a question for me, Senior Scooterson?
Uh,
Or El
um,
Scooter? El Scooter.
uh, no, I wasn't really able to come up with too much for acceptance.
Okay.
So I'm happy to do a few of your questions if you'd like. And
Yeah.
if I think of anything, I'll forward to
Okay. Yeah. Like I literally made a ton, and
you. Yeah.
uh, and so we'll
I
go
don't,
through.
you guys are so much better at making questions than I am. I
Yeah,
think.
but you're so much better at answering them than I am. So maybe that's why we're a team.
Yeah, sounds good.
What we resist tends to persist, but what we accept loses its power to dominate us. What
Hmm.
lingering issue in your life has softened through the slow practice of acceptance?
Um,
Lingering, softened practice.
so could you repeat the question real quick? Just
Yeah.
I think I have an answer. I just
What
want to learn
lingering
it.
issue in your life has softened through the slow practice of acceptance?
Um, this that's a really interesting question.
Yeah, because it's talking about something that's not fully gone, but you've at least made some progress. And I think that that's important for us to talk about in front of people as well, is that there's things that really are work in progress.
Yeah, this might. Uh, there's two things come to mind. But the one that I think of is tradition,
Okay.
which might sound kind of weird.
Okay, explain for everybody.
Okay, so when I came into Narcotics Anonymous this last time, my first sponsor is what's known as a traditions Nazi,
Right.
right? And for those who don't know, in 12-step fellowships, there's the 12 steps, right? And there's also something called the 12 traditions. And the 12 traditions are geared toward how we run our meetings in order, or gives us the groundwork on how to run our meetings, right? So that they're able to stabilize and grow and uh, everything is above board and fair. So it's not necessarily about uh, the hard financial business transactions, all of that is included, but it's talking about things like membership, or that Narcotics Anonymous as a whole doesn't have an outside opinions and stuff. So for a long time, I was very opinionated about parts of recovery. And I think that if I the best example I can use is language. Now, one of the things that growing up with my mom, the way my mom parented me, and hanging out with philosophy and English majors when I was at university, I came to realize the importance of language and how important little things are when it comes to like what words you use make a significant impact uh, on the way they form the structure that you view the world, right? So
And
my
how
bet,
others view us, really.
yeah. So my personal stuff with language manifests in two ways, right? On the internal, it manifests in the way that I talk to myself, which was really important because I have been notorious for treating myself like dog shit, and a lot of that is through voice. And by the way, if being hard worked on us, it would have worked a long time ago. So you can just drop being hard on yourself.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the group setting at NA, specifically NA, we have we have language that we try to use. Um, so uh, for example, saying sober in an NA meeting, right? Now, there's a history of that word where in the dictionary it says that it's uh, gear, especially alcohol, right? So there's a connotation that you can develop where if someone says they're sober, they only mean alcohol, they don't mean substances. And this, right? So that used to piss me off when people would say it. They're saying, "Oh, I'm sober." Well, don't say sober because you're more than sober. You're clean, and clean is a lot different. So, so for advocating the word clean, I'm saying like like you're not no booze, no drugs, no lying. You're working a program, that kind of stuff. Now, for a long time, I would I'd be an asshole about it, right? Because I'm saying you're cheating yourself by using that word, but at the same time, it's just not part of like what we should be doing in NA, whatever that is. Uh, there's other examples that I can give too, but that's probably the most common. So, because so I used to think that I was coming from a position where uh, they they should know better if they're old timers, and or they should recognize that uh, that's not how we do things here in NA, right? And I'm going to point that out to you.
Hmm.
Right? It's like a more practical example is in many NA meetings we talk about saying or about being vague with drug names, right?
Hmm.
And
Use
I don't
DOC.
DLC, right? And I don't know how many times I've heard a newcomer come in and say, I used to do crack or I've done meth or blah blah blah. And somebody will pipe up and say, we don't use those words here, we say deals. And every time I've experienced that happening, the newcomer stops sharing, and many times I would not see them again.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly on that.
So that's bullshit. So where I come from now, how it is soft, is I realized that my job is to create a safe place to contribute to the meeting being a safe place where people can say whatever they need to say to stay clean, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't. Semantics are on such a low level when it comes to saving lives, right? That I'm not going to be the guy that's got some time in this. You should share this way. You should share that way. No, you share what you need to share to stay clean, and that's the bottom line.
Statistically, we have one chance to reach that newcomer.
Yeah,
Statistically, you have that one meeting to be loving, accepting, and to embrace them into the community. Why the
yeah,
hell would you use that time to shit shame?
it's terrible,
You know, like
terrible.
I absolutely just am so conscious of that now. You know, when I realized and learned that statistic, I was like,
Yeah,
that's our one chance of saving their life. And you're going to use it by putting yourself on a pedestal with pride, you know?
yeah.
It's exactly it.
It
So
really that it. There's more important things that
being
so.
right and being happy don't always simultaneously occur.
Mhm.
And you know, I just think that there's too many people running around trying to be right,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and myself included in certain moments.
If only they had a bit more acceptance.
Exactly. And here we are. So, what lingering issue in my life has softened through the slow practice of acceptance? You know, the very first thing that comes to mind, so it's the only thing I'm going to talk about is is really like self-acceptance for me.
Mm,
I had an uncle who called me the devil, told his kids that I was the devil, not to hang out with me. I had a lot of people say I was bad when I was young because I was, you know, I was fatherless for a bunch of years. My mom worked full time. I mean, for in some ways, I was a bit of a wild child. I was really smart, really hyper, and really really vocal about how I felt like when rules were not laid out correctly. So that made a
mhm,
lot of adults resent me. And,
mhm.
and, and, and to this day,
Do you
to,
have a chip on your shoulder?
to this day, I still feel like there's something wrong with me. I still
Mhm,
feel like, you know, when I was talking about doing that step 4 on beliefs, I'm in a step group right now, and that's coming up, and that's definitely one of the things I want to address in this round of the steps. You know,
mhm,
and so for me though is that, you know, coming through the, you know, I've done 2 sets of steps now.
mhm,
I definitely feel better about myself than I've ever felt, but it's not all gone yet,
mhm.
you know, and right now at this point, all I can do is keep in the progress, you know,
Yeah,
and keep surrendering those thoughts and feelings, you know.
mhm,
And but it has definitely been the lingering issue is self-worth, shame and guilt about who I am, you know,
yeah.
and what I've
I uh,
done.
I can really relate to that because I my dad was an alcoholic and he was never a good role model for me.
Mm,
And then he had when after my parents divorced, he ended up moving to Alberta eventually. So there was a period of time when I was in a similar situation. And yeah, I just got into a lot of trouble. There's a big difference with having both parents and then having a one, especially my mom. Like I love my mom. She did the best job she could do, but there's something about a boy without a father figure
mm.
that the shit goes awry.
And also, you know, like it doesn't matter how much our moms love us, man. If they're working, like I was a latchkey kid. I was
Yeah.
coming home and unlocking the house myself, and sometimes my trip home was like running for my life from bullies, getting in the house and locking the door, and they'd be pounding on my house.
Yeah.
Like it was not a peaceful environment at all, you
Mhm.
know, and so, like what did that breed? I know there was years where I was bullying other kids, like it
Yeah.
was like my turn or something like that. And I've made amends to some of them, but you know, there's there's like just countless moments of that did not make me feel good about me. I
Mhm.
was not, I was believing what others were saying at that point in my life, you know?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think when you're a kid, that's the hardest time when you don't know what or who to believe because you're just learning.
Yeah.
You're really
Uh,
impressionable.
and then just briefly, so then when I had my first drink, all that bullshit went away.
Yeah. Oh, that was it. Yeah. And that's the problem is that coming from that kind of fear, pain, self-loathing, shame, substances certainly do at the beginning remove us from those painful situations, even if it's temporarily. There is a relief from the pain that's going on,
There's
100%.
there's definitely a reason I kept doing it,
Yeah. So
basically.
acceptance is not about giving up. It's showing up fully even when the outcome isn't ours to decide. How
Mm.
has your understanding of surrender deepened through acceptance over the years?
I can think of it as a very general term. Uh, like my wife, my wife says, accept things where they are, not as I would have them to be, right? And I think I think surrendering to the program in a very broad sense, I think people come to mind. Like I was saying before, like meet with language, meet people where they are. If someone's coming in and they're sharing in a way that I don't appreciate, that doesn't trump their right to share.
Yeah.
You know, and I think dealing with sponsees is hard sometimes. And I think that's I've had a lot of. I've never had many sponsees, but I have had a handful over the years. And there are times when uh, I would like to just beat them with a basic text until they until they turn that corner. Um, and I've realized that with with many addicts, that window is so small, like you said, right?
Hmm.
And, and the only way to get them through that window is to get them um, right away.
Yeah.
But it's funny because so and I've I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but I'm gonna try to. So it's really I've really come to accept that uh, I this is gonna sound really egotistical, but or it's not me that got them clean. It's not me that keeps them clean. My job is to get them the message, right? It was actually one of the daily readings today. I can't remember if it was the SPAD or the JFT, but it was talking about how, you know, you can bring somebody to the message. That's your role, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's coming to realize that um, it's not about me.
Mm-hmm.
So my acceptance that it's not about me takes a lot of pressure,
Yep.
right? And very rarely, even when like you get into a tiff with somebody, or somebody says something that you don't like, they're dealing with their own shit too. So if it's not all about me, it's not about them either. It's a happy medium. I don't know if that answers the question, but
Yeah.
that's where my
It was
mind
it
just
was amazing.
my mind just kind of went out to left field there.
I thought it was great. It just made me think like, I had this minor conflict with someone the other week, and I just swept my side of the street with my conversation with them, and then it was still kind of them a little bit agitated at me,
Hmm.
and I was just like, I'm okay with this. Like, I'm okay right now with this.
Yeah.
And I was just driving later that afternoon, and I'm like, this isn't even probably about me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm like, who am I to think I'm so important that I'm what's making this person a certain way, you know?
Hmm.
And and then the next day it turned out not to be about me. The person was actually like, hey, I'm going through this. This is going on. And I was like, oh.
Hmm.
I'm like, see, silly Milan. See, silly Milan, you're not the fucking center of the universe. How has your understanding of surrender, or my understanding of surrender, deepened through acceptance over the years? Well, I'm only coming up on my second year, but you know, what's happened with me and surrender for, is really just, oh God, freedom and joy and life changing. It's life changing, I am still full of shortcomings and character defects, but I am stepping back and letting that rope go more than ever in my life.
Hmm.
And, like if I was like 0 out of 10 for moments of surrender and I'm at 3, that is like 0 times infinity still doesn't equal 30% of my life. Like
Hmm.
surrendering correctly, like that's the one
Hmm.
thing when you come from none, anything is infinitely more. And,
Hmm.
uh, and so, I see it as a work in progress. I see it as work that I'm embracing the actual challenge of it, like just trying to figure out better states of being for me to be in, better prayer, better meditation, just better conscious contact is equaling better surrender,
Hmm.
and so,
That's spiritual fitness.
yeah, it really is. And, I gotta say, like, going to the conference this weekend, being inside a place with 40,000 other people who are free from a demon that they thought they were going to die from,
Hmm.
you know, like when something that somebody said touched us and we were all crying together. We were crying because we knew what that pain felt like.
Yeah.
Like we actually had empathy because, but and
I bet you could just feel it. You just feel it in the air.
you could feel it, man. Like it was like there was one of the guys. There was 3 people who spoke on at the closing ceremony yesterday, and the first guy, it was incredible. Like he really showed how humor is one of the most healing tools in the world. But the second guy, he had just had such a story about how the community and the program has like just changed his life and supported him through crazy things. I didn't need to look. I knew I could feel the five people behind me producing tears just like me, even though there wasn't a sound. Like I was openly weeping while this guy was talking, and just like, you know, felt so connected, so connected.
Yeah.
It was an indescribable thing where, like that's the one thing is that we are so different inside these programs, but we have one common pain that we know, like we know is life or death for us, For
Mhm.
anybody who's really hit a rock bottom and entered into any kind of long term cleanliness or sobriety, whatever you want to call it, like, you know that you don't ever want to go back there. Like literally that wanting to go back there is a reservation, and you probably wouldn't get long term sobriety or cleanliness with it.
Mhm.
Yeah. I gotta say, it was super inspiring. Okay, are you ready for another question, El Scooter?
I am, yeah.
Okay. In early recovery, acceptance was a lifeline. In long term recovery, it becomes a lifestyle. How do
Mhm.
you practice acceptance now compared to how you did in the early days?
I think the breadth and depth of acceptance
Ooh, yeah.
increases so much the longer you're in the program. Is it if you try to stay spiritual, like what happens. So in the beginning, uh, I learned and practiced acceptance because people told me it would get me clean, and it's not that I had to. Like nobody told me, but I was so afraid of relapsing and so afraid of what that would entail that I was willing to do what was suggested with me. Right. And that starts with the acceptance of step one. I find that as I've grown in recovery, uh, that step one starts going into different areas of my life. Uh, and my ability to accept things is really uh, instrumental in my life today. Like uh, a lot of it, I think, comes with personal responsibility. Like if I don't cook supper, you know, nobody gets to eat. If I don't do the dishes don't get done. So there's like the hard level of I accept that there's dishes to do, I gotta do it. Um, but like dealing with uh I think dealing with people, but it's like it's so much easier to accept things as they are and then go from there than it is to resist that accept. So it's a matter of living in that harmony with the world around me. And practicing that step one, like I have to admit the watch is broken before I want to fix it. And the addict in me is going like it's right twice a day, you don't have to worry. But I have to say no, 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 no. It's fucking broke. And so it's recognizing that coming into my like as I move forward in my day, uh things are the way they are sometimes. This is okay. I have a thing, and it's I wanted to share it today. I wasn't sure when. I think that this might I don't know if it'll answer your question or not, but I think that it's coming to my mind, so I want to talk about it. I hope that's okay.
You know it is.
So one of the things with acceptance that bugged me in the beginning was I saw that there were great people throughout history that accomplished their greatness because they didn't accept the way things were. Okay. And I've come to realize that it's about uh, accepting the way things are, as well as accepting that things can change, as well as accepting that you are that tool for change.
Hmm.
So the example I would give is Rosa Parks. Huh? So I used to think that she didn't accept that she had to sit at the back of the bus. So she sat at the front of the bus and all that shit happened. But what I think is she accepted that the laws were there, but she had the acceptance that they were wrong. And she had the acceptance that she could do something about it. She got fed up. It's because I used to think, well, like if the great people like that did it out of non-acceptance, then this whole accept everything shit is just shit. But
But
that's the
it's
way
kind of
she,
like she lived the serenity prayer, man. She,
yeah,
she had this serenity to like accept what she could not change, the courage to change what she could, and the wisdom to know the difference.
exactly. So I think that you have to accept the way things are before you can change them.
Well, but the reality is okay. Like, if we look at it philosophically for a second, right?
Hmm.
It's not
Please,
that
please do.
it's not that she didn't accept the reality she was in,
Hmm.
right? Like the like I could peacefully in my mind decide to protest. Okay, imagine I was black for a second. I
Hmm.
could decide, hey, I think this law is not right. The only way that I can see to changing this is sitting on the front of the bus. I'm not angry.
Hmm.
I'm not yelling at you. I'm not even sad. I'm just taking the action I can.
Hmm.
Right? Like there I believe that when we're talking about acceptance, it's about, are we going to a defect inside ourselves, being, too much anger, too much sadness, too much whatever it
Hmm.
is, like what is that lack of acceptance manifesting as? Because I truly believe that it doesn't mean to change nothing. You
Hmm.
know, what it means is not to put ourselves in a state of discomfort.
Hmm. Harmony.
Yeah. Like we can completely, like I am completely in harmony with my knowledge that I'm not going to the back of the bus. I am not angry. I'm not angry at the bus driver who's yelling at me because I understand that that's his job and that's how
Mhm.
he sees it. But I'm still going to sit here.
Okay. So here's a question.
Okay.
Do you think that acceptance is the start of emotional detachment?
Detachment?
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I think that it removes the self from the picture.
That's right. It in surrender, like it's like, you kind of have acceptance and then it like, really great acceptance almost turns into surrender
Hmm.
in some
Hmm.
ways there. And for sure,
But
about emotional detachment because we otherwise we become puppets. We are
hmm.
literally the puppets for other people's words, and we're just on the string of their words or actions.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and we don't have to agree with it, but we don't have to let them get us mad about it
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
sad or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like we can just be like, well, that's them and keep trudging. I just learned something at this conference. Trudging, okay, when they're like trudge the road of happy destiny in the AA big book, right? I
Hmm.
thought forever trudging was like picturing a gray sky, a muddy path, and I'm like literally boots sucking in the mud and I'm stepping forward. Trudging
Yeah,
means walk with purpose. It does not mean
really.
struggle in a shitty situation.
I
Like,
didn't know that.
I
That's
know,
amazing.
I
That's
know. So
amazing.
it's like literally we are walking with purpose to a happy destiny. Like
Wow.
that's way better, eh?
That's so much better.
I know. I know. So when you talk about the importance of words, that just blew my mind.
Yeah.
I was
I
like,
like
I
I like
like,
that a lot.
yeah, I like walking with purpose versus having a shitty walk through shitty times. Like, it's a completely different thing.
Yeah, I thought yeah, it's amazing.
I know. So
And
how has my or how do I practice acceptance now compared to how I did it in the early days? You know, I think of like early recovery and it was like survival acceptance. You know, like
hmm
my step one was like scared into me through dying. And and at that point though, I really did accept defeat against my fight
hmm
inside my program. Like step one was against my addiction was done. Somebody walking by there, you're like peeking.
No, yeah, my wife needs to help opening the pine sol bottle.
Oh, okay. um, but now, you know, I feel that I like how you said, like, what did you say? You broadens and more depth, broader with more
Breadth
depth. Yeah,
breadth and depth. Yeah.
yeah. Like, I thought that was great because really now, first of all, my acceptance, like my awareness of my scope of acceptance or lack of, it's like telegraphing things now, where
hmm
it's like I can see that if I keep talking with that person in that way, there is going to be a conflict,
hmm
and I can and I get to the crossroad before I hit the crossroad,
hmm
where I can actually just be like, okay, I don't want to be there today. I don't want to be part of that, and I don't, and I can just let that go, or I can remove myself from the situation. You know, it's the one thing that I really do enjoy is that I now actively use the choice whether I'm hitting the ball back in a situation or not. Like I
hmm
used to just hit every ball that came at me,
Yeah.
you know, and now I'm like,
You can.
it's not worth it. It's not worth it right now. I'm going to leave, you know, like, or whatever, like, because I know sometimes I'm not far enough along in my program to not react verbally. And so for me, it's stepping away is really my most effective method of remaining in a state of a good state of surrender or acceptance. And
hmm
then it's like I get some time to reflect and then, you know,
I think I think as you practice acceptance, you can tolerate acceptance more and more.
or you can tolerate lack of acceptance.
Both.
Yeah,
And from other people too.
that's what I mean. Yeah,
Like you don't have to engage in situations that just suck your energy away. Like you can just, you know,
yeah,
like, oh, like someone in your life is proving to be a bit of a narcissist or something. You can say, maybe I'll cool the jets on that friendship for a while.
yeah,
You have more self-assurance, I guess.
yeah. And you literally also though have more acceptance that you can't change them.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like it's like, oh, okay.
And there's,
I don't need to fix you.
yeah, yeah.
You know, and that's a big one because it's just like, oh, I'm busy fixing me. I'm pretty good at fixing right now. Why don't I do some fixing on Scotty? Hey, Scotty, you need a little
Yeah,
tune up here on your brain.
yeah.
I think it's human nature to think that, once we figure something out for ourselves, let's share it. Let's share it with everybody. They're going to love. Why aren't they loving this too?
Yeah,
Okie dokie. Are you ready for another one?
I am.
Okay. When we stop demanding that life be different, we start experiencing peace, often for the first time. What parts of your life have brought peace only after you stopped resisting them?
Uh, hmm, I think the steps really.
Ooh. You were step resistant for a while?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So, like I said, my first sponsor was heavy into the position, and as part of that manifested in so there's two things that happened. One, it was manifesting in that he wasn't as rigid on the steps as some sponsors are.
Okay.
Uh, not that not that he didn't do them, not that I didn't do them with him, but he was probably a bit more laid back with them than some people were.
Like on timeline, you mean?
Timelines, yeah,
Yeah.
timelines.
Okay.
Um, Combined with my stints in the psych ward, so I was on step four for a long time, like a couple of years.
Oh, wow.
And when you're on a step for too long, two things happen. For me, two things happened. One was uh, it became a bigger deal than it had to be.
Mhm.
And the other one is the first three steps change because you're clean and you're spending time in recovery and you're trying to build that foundation with steps one, two, and three. But then it's like you're waiting for the contractor on step four. It just doesn't go, it's just not happening, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and so so I was a bit resistant there. Um, I also came to learn that if you're struggling with a step, it's the previous step that you have an issue with, not the step that you're on.
Yeah. I
So
heard like 40 people say that at this conference.
yeah,
Yeah.
real
Like,
it's real wisdom in there.
yeah.
So then as I as I moved forward in working the steps, they became a much more enriching process. Like when I finally made it over that, and like I mean, I share this quite a bit. Like I wrote parts of my step four in code,
Oh, yeah.
right? So other people couldn't read it if they found it, and that's just how kind of like fucked up I was mentally.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, paranoia for sure.
Paranoid for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so um, I realized that the steps aren't there to kind of be combative. They're there to heal you. And once I realized that it wasn't because there was that resistance with wanting to get all of that stuff out in step four,
Mhm.
right? And then what I ended up doing my step five was really my step five was pretty good. Um, and I've done multiple sets of steps now.
Mhm.
And I realize that sometimes I fall into the trap of um having too much screen time to do the steps, or they should look a certain way. Most recently, though, and I think this is the most direct way recently that I can explain things. So I'm actually doing a set of steps through a different step working guide,
Mhm.
and in part of it's step one has like a chapter in it. Uh, where it talks about being a co-addict, right? So how does it's its own defined section where it talks about co-addiction, codependency, stuff like that. When I started this book, I looked at that section and went, no, I don't gotta do that. I'm not a co-addict. I'm not codependent. I've got this time in, I've done this work on myself. It's not there. It's not there. And then as I've mostly from the prompting of my wife, was like, maybe I should take a deeper look into this, right? Maybe it's not a bad idea to go through this section and just see if anything matches. And I'll make my decision then. And lo and behold, there's lots of shit in there that I haven't unpacked in 15 years based on codependency and stuff like that. So the more open-minded I am in doing step work, the better off I am. So that learning to accept that, there's even though I've got some time in, the work doesn't end. You just, but you know what's really cool about that, Milan? That the
Hmm.
work never ends. Neither do the rewards.
Yeah, and also, if you like the challenge, it means that you've got something to do forever.
Yeah,
Like I'm never gonna be bored inside the
yeah,
program, you know?
never. And not only that, but I'm sure you've experienced this too, but when you do a set of steps with a sponsee,
Yeah,
it's like you doing the steps all over again too.
yeah, I agree.
So,
So, what part of my life has brought peace only after I stopped resisting it? You know, I want to say prayer and meditation.
mm,
Like I, I was like not entirely embracing it early on, and I think I mean, geez, you've kind of seen it develop here with me over the last whatever 7 months this podcast's been going, or 8 months. I really just decided at the end of October last year when a friend had a relapse. Every time a friend has a relapse, I really just start. I'm like, where's my program week? And when I took a look at
mhm.
my program, I was like, it's prayer and meditation, you know? And so I started implementing that and started to try and do it and started to meditate more and then just finally this spring really found a form of prayer that it's working for me to do to feel results from and you know I just oh gosh I gotta send you the recording. Have you heard of two-way prayer?
I have heard of two-way prayer.
Yeah. So anyway, this is my new adventure I'm embarking on, and I met somebody who lives and swears by it. There, I'm gonna have him on the podcast. Ooh,
Hmm.
maybe you should be on that one. Ooh,
I'd
yeah.
be
This guy,
down. I'd be
yeah, this
down.
guy's out of Texas and just pretty amazing. So anyway, yeah. So for myself, I mean, I think it was prayer and meditation on that front. So I've got another question for you here, if you would like,
I
Mon
would.
Capitan. Acceptance invites us to sit with reality without the need to explain, fix, or escape it. What truth about yourself or others have you grown to accept without needing to change?
Without needing to change.
Yeah, like what truth do you now not need to change? Can you accept
Hmm.
something that you were formerly resistant to or unaccepting? We'll call it intolerant.
I guess. Yeah, I totally know how to answer that question.
Okay.
Can you answer it first, then I follow you, or?
Yeah, sure. So, what truth about myself or others have I grown to accept without needing to change? One of the big things that I found out in my step work was I had a real intolerance for people as they were, and I was
Mhm.
using that as it was like the source of my anger and resentments or my sadness or whatever the resentment was. It was definitely that I was right and they needed to change, like because I
Mhm.
deserved or I should get some kind of treatment for actions that I did, and I've come through the step work and just through various readings and life education, like not all entirely from any one program, but I've come to see how damaging that is to others.
Mhm.
Like it really basically projects who you are as wrong.
Mhm.
And now that I'm looking at having that feeling inside myself and really trying to help myself get past that, you know, I'm seeing that I need to offer that same freedom and also that same acceptance for others that I hope to have in myself or for myself, right?
Mhm.
And so for me, it's a big work in progress, but the truth is that I'm I'm no longer wanting to make you feel bad about you because it's not who I want you to be or because you're not doing what I want you to do. Like when I catch
Mhm.
myself doing that, that's just something that, the truth is it's none of my business.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's my answer to that. Do you want to answer that one now or do you want a different one?
But we'll answer that one.
Okay. So, what truth about yourself or others have you grown to accept without needing to change?
I totally flip that inward, man. I'm gonna go with myself
Yeah.
that I am enough,
Yes. Yeah.
and that uh those things in my past that I view as failures, that I can either beat myself up for them or I can accept that they've led me to where I am today.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of funny to say you got to the steps and then you don't change, but I think that the core of who I am, right, is I'm a decent person, right? I've got some
Yeah.
flaws and stuff, but you know what I mean? So learning to accept, and I think that, I mean, you do work when you're in recovery, but learning that overwhelming belief that I need to be better.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I would go with
I
that.
love that. The overwhelming belief that I need to be better. Okay. I have another question.
Hmm.
Long term sobriety brings new challenges, or long term cleanliness, and with them, new invitations to practice acceptance with grace. How
Hmm.
have your most recent life changes tested your ability to live by this principle?
Mm. Well, I had a spiritual experience over the weekend as well. Uh, I got baptized on Sunday,
Woo!
so that's a thing. And I think that what that shows me a bunch is that the role of service is really important, and the role of company is really. Could you repeat the question real quick? Because
Sure.
I have an answer in my head, but I'm not sure it'll answer your question.
How have your most recent life changes tested your ability to live by this principle of acceptance?
Hmm. So I was taking a look at service and what service is, right?
Hmm.
And what selfless service. There's in our literature, in any literature, in our literature, it says, service is doing the right thing for the right reason. And I know that for me, service hasn't always been healthy in my recovery.
Okay.
So I've done a lot of service out of people pleasing,
Hmm.
and I've done a lot of service out of negative self-talk and wanting to feel better, so I'm doing the service. Now, I've had arguments with people about, you know, is doing selfless service a uh, an example of like doing service where I want to do it because it'll make me feel better? Is that selfless service?
Hmm.
And then being going into another community, like a spiritual community that the church is, it's like, where is my role now? Because I'm kind of a newcomer again. So acceptance for me includes patience with myself, and it means that it's okay for me to recovery's given me tools that I can use in exploring this new spiritual avenue that I'm in. Um, but I have to accept. So okay, this is here's an example. So yesterday at the service, there was a guy speaking who it was like one of his first times ever giving the sermon. And my brain goes, I'll be up there. These people have no idea how good of a sermon that I'm going to do when I'm up there, right? Like,
Yeah.
they don't know nothing. And uh, that's my ego coming in, right?
Yeah. Totally.
So that's what I have to say. Like no, Scott, you why don't you try attending for multiple Sundays in a row first? Or why don't you finish reading the Bible front to back before you decide to go up on stage and give
Before you're
let
Jesus.
yeah, right? So it's accepting those things, right? Accepting limitations and stuff like that. That's why.
I love that. Yeah, like how have my most recent life changes tested my ability to live this principle? I mean, I'm really vocal about how I'm changing my prayer, my putting my focus in my life on surrender, and I mean,
Hmm.
trying, trying to, you know, uh, trying to live a life of surrender is
Hmm.
literally testing my ability to live acceptance. You know, like it the two are so closely related. Surrender and
Hmm.
acceptance. I like they're like cousins who like had the same dad or something. But they got that same look, and just one of them's got brown hair, the other one's got red hair. But for me, it really there's been multiple times where I catch myself and I'm just like, okay, either I'm walking the walk and I'm choosing to actively try to let go of this rope, you know, and praying for it to go too, or I'm just forever going to be the same me. Like if I never take the step to change, even surrendering that change, it's going to be the
Hmm.
same me here every time. And
Yeah.
so, there's a massive amount of awareness in it. There's that awareness fuels whether I've grown or not. Or not fuels,
Hmm.
but informs me whether I've grown or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I've got another question for you.
Shoot.
Okay. What is your timeline, too? I just want to check in on that.
I'm good for whenever.
Okay, so we once believed acceptance was weakness. Now we see it as one of the strongest forms of spiritual courage. What's
Hmm.
one area where you've chosen acceptance over control even when it hurts?
Hmm. My diet.
Ooh.
So, um, so Megan's type 1, I'm type 2, and there's a level of attempted control in what we eat, and our addictions play out in what we eat as well. So it's coming to accept that there's a particular way of eating that would greatly benefit both of us. And I don't know if you know the history of the keto diet.
I don't know the history of it, but I've done it for a bit before.
So it was originally formed in the early 1900s, like 19 teens,
Okay.
for people with epilepsy. So if you're on, if you is a, if your carbs are low enough throughout the day, um, and you do it long enough, uh, it changes your mental state. It induces cell autophagy in your body, but also your brain. And I'm coming to accept that it it really is the only diet that I will be successful on, but that it goes further than so. I've applied to be an apprentice instrumentation technician, and there's going to be schooling involved. And the difference between me when I've been on keto and been not on keto, like I swear I lose like 20 IQ points when I'm not on keto.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm just not as with it cognitively all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm coming to accept that that this diet is something that I will have to practice if I want to achieve what I want to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got to let go of that control to do it myself because I fail and I cheat if I'm left to
Mm-hmm.
my own devices.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So for me, that acceptance comes from if I want to live a particular life, I have to do particular things.
Mm-hmm.
And no, I don't get to eat a chocolate bar.
Yeah. Although they actually do make keto friendly snacks and chocolate bars, that some of them are great, actually.
Some of them are really good.
Yeah, but they're not the same exact thing. That's for sure. So long term sobriety faces new challenges. Oh no, we did that one. Oh, okay. Sorry, we once believed acceptance was weakness. Now we see it as one of the strongest forms of spiritual courage. What's one area where I've chosen acceptance over control, even when it hurt? Well, I really think the thing that comes to mind, and I know that I have no control over it. I know it's sponsees and when they relapse.
Mm.
You know, it's absolutely just we can't control that. We don't control that. But
No.
acceptance of that can really dull a lot of the pain. You
Mhm.
know, like keeping that preference in my mind and trying to like have a justified sadness is still me controlling it. You
Mhm.
know, and so yeah, I find that I'm definitely better at that release than I ever was. And I don't like it. I'm never gonna like when somebody does, but I don't have to hold on to it.
Mhm.
Like I really can actually experience it, and actually it can pass way faster now than it ever did before.
Yeah.
because it happens, and I can only run my program. And some days, that's enough. Every day it's enough. Okay, I've got two more questions for you.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, actually, you know what? Yeah, I got time I got time for them both. Here we go. Acceptance allows us to love more deeply because we stop trying to make people into who we want them to be. How has practicing acceptance improved the way you love and relate to others?
Well, I think that meeting them where they are in their life and not having premeditated expectations on what about them. And when you're able to cut out those premeditated expectations, it's a much softer approach to loving somebody. And I think one of the biggest differences there is that you start to love people for who they are, not who you think they are.
Yeah. I just want to say one thing I heard somebody say this weekend that I've never seen done, or I've never done it, and nobody asked me to do it. Is that one lady was talking about when she did her first step four. And what her sponsor did is every person that she had a resentment for, she also had to write six things she loved about them.
Wow.
And I just thought, what a nice way to put balance into it. Like
Hmm.
the sponsor's logic was these people are in your life for a reason. So you can't forget those reasons too.
Hmm.
And then the lady said, some of them it was impossible almost to.
Hmm.
But anyway, I thought that was a really great thing. And so, how has practicing acceptance improved the way I love and relate to others? If I have acceptance towards somebody, it is a night and day experience with them. When I
Hmm.
have lack of acceptance and intolerance, I am pushing them away. Like,
Hmm.
by telling somebody who they are fundamentally is wrong, which is really what I believe in lack of acceptance projects these
Hmm.
days. Um, they want nothing to do with you. Like they want
Hmm.
to get away from you as soon as they can.
Hmm.
And I just realized now how unhealthy that is, and I quickly make amends when I see myself acting like that now. Like I really do. I step 10 myself on the spot, and that's it. Okay, last question here for today, and I am very grateful we got together, El Scooter. In the end, acceptance is not about tolerating what is, it's about embracing what's real and trusting what's next. How has your ability to trust the process of life evolved through acceptance in long term recovery?
Hmm. Could you repeat it real quick?
How has your ability to trust the process of life evolved through acceptance in long term recovery?
Hmm. I have learned that life on life's terms isn't always a bad thing.
Yeah,
We use it is often used in a sense of uh, like life is going to kick your ass. But it's been my it's been my experience that uh, when I the more you can roll with the punches, the better life is, and that there's some things that happen in your life that are magical. It's not. I don't think it's a real. Uh, I don't view my spirituality and my reality to be at war with each other all the time.
yeah,
Sometimes life is good.
yeah,
Like I woke up today, I'm well rested. I had a nice coffee and smoke with my wife on our balcony. We get up early, so that we live in a busy apartment. So being up early, it's nice out. Like that's part of life on life's terms too. You know? So
absolutely. I love that. And so, how has my ability to trust the process of life evolved through acceptance and long-term recovery? You know, this came up. Like I was just at this conference. I was just at this conference where I went into the building where I died 21 months and 7 days ago. And part of my message in my share after I walked in that building was I saw dying that day as a horrible thing, as a
Mhm.
scary thing. And if I didn't die that day, I wouldn't be where I am now. I never would have broke free of my addiction. Like
Yeah.
the gifts and the lessons in moments are unforeseeable by us in most circumstances. Like the long-term lesson in something we usually cannot see amidst the pain,
Mhm.
you know? And so I just know, like I literally have a tattoo on my arm that says acceptance. It's part of my life purpose. I trudge this road of happy destiny with the
Yeah.
purpose of learning surrender and acceptance.
Mm. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Scotty, would you take us out with the joke?
Yeah, sure. So did you hear about the addict that died in his sleep?
No, I did not.
Yeah, he overdosed.
Tune in next episode for more recovery fun. Bye bye, everybody. I love you. Please help us help others. If you'd like what you've seen here today, please subscribe and share this podcast and help us get to 100 followers. We're looking for interaction with our audience. So please email recoveryfreedomrising@gmail.com or contact Milan South Okanagan Starcic on Facebook with questions, topic suggestions, or just comments. We'd love to hear from you.